Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Monir El Azzouzi from easymedicaldevice.com. And today we'll give you an update of what is happening within the MDR or IVDR or the situation related to that. And specifically, we'll look at expert panel situation because there is some news here, and also about the MDR transition and the IVDR transition for giving you some also latest news. And for that, I have with me Erik Vollebregt, our preferred lawyer, that will help us to understand more the situation. So, Erik, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Thanks for having me again, Monir.
I think we have a lot to talk about today. Some explanation, but explanation more about some changes or some updates or some news that were coming related to the MDR and IVDR. And the first one I want to talk about is about the announcement that we saw. For me, it was a surprise. I was not aware of it. An announcement that says that there will be an handover of the expert panel to the EMA, which the EMA is the European Medicinal Agency. So was it a surprise for you first? And what is the reason for that? Is there any reason for doing this kind of thing?
Well, it wasn't really a big surprise for me because we track all the new legislation around medical devices quite scrupulously. But what was happening basically is that basically what they did at European level was that they just reshuffled the organizational structure for the expert panel. So it was at the JRC, the Joint Research Committee, and they moved it to the EMA, so you would say it's a normal intra-institutional reshuffle in the EU, as happens sometimes. Like, for example, they move devices from DG Growth to DG Santé. Yeah. But whenever a move like that happens, it is significant in a way. Because what we have seen also is that the EMA is really in the process of building up its devices expertise, because of course the EMA under MDR has a lot more, and under the IVDR as well, has a lot more involvement with medical devices. What we see now also is that they seem to be recruiting more and more people also for a bit outside of that scope. So it looks like the EMA sees a role for itself in medical devices to an extent. So in that sense, this is interesting, especially also, of course, in the whole discussion about how is the MDR as it currently is that the right way to regulate medical devices in Europe? Because at some point I actually went back to the impact assessment for the MDR and the IVDR as it was made back in 2012 when these proposals were underway. The option was explicitly on the table. Okay. To have an agency for medical devices, much like the FDA, but then separate, that would do market approvals for medical devices rather than have notified bodies do conformity assessments. And at the time, it was actually interesting to see that the persons that are now complaining about notified bodies the most, industry, was really against having an independent agency, which is also, of course, there's all kinds of things you can think about it, but one of the advantages with an agency is, if you look at how the EMA works for medicines, for example, is that you have fixed deadlines for review.
Exactly.
And this is something that nobody has with their notified body. Maybe if they pay quadruple for expedited review with fixed dates, which I don't think any notified body even offers at this moment. But of course, there are advantages of having an agency. And in that sense, it's also significant that the medical devices policy is now at DG Santé, DG Health, because DG Health is the Director General of the Commission that has the most experience with setting up and maintaining agencies. Because they have the EMA, they have the EFSA, the European Food Agency, and a couple of others. So for them, this is like, it's a bit more like if you have a hammer, you can set up agencies, then everything may look like a nail. So this might be a direction. And also, since this policy option has been on the table, it might still be an option. The only problem is, of course, that is this going to happen, and how are you going to structure it?
Yeah,
because it would be an enormous change to the regulatory philosophy for medical devices in Europe.
So for people that are listening, so just to have a clear summary here, the EMA is the agency for medicinal products. So yes. Medicinal products or pharmaceutical companies doesn't need notified bodies. When they want to make a submission, they go to the EMA or to local agencies, but there is no notified body. For medical devices, we don't have, I don't think, but we don't have this kind of agency like the EMA in Europe. So there is no upper agency that is managing all the medical device stuff in Europe.
Now, the closest we are coming is basically the interplay between the European Commission and the MDCG, because people often say, well, the European Commission should do this or should do that. But people often forget that the European Commission by itself, basically can't do very much, legally speaking. The only thing is that the MDR introduced the MDCG, the Medical Devices Coordination Group, which is, let's say, more of a formalized structure for member states to cooperate for devices policy, because we already had the informal variant under the directives. But now this has been formalized in the MDCG, but also the MDCG. It has competences, but it's not an agency itself. Yeah, it just consists of people that are delegated to the MDCG from the member states. And as we've seen with anything that the MDCG has to do, MDCG has basically zero capacity, and it's incredibly slow with guidances because, it doesn't have any means of its own. It just has the people that member states will delegate to the MDCG to do stuff. And in that sense, it is not even that much different from the EMA, which is also kind of a network organization that has a core of people that are employed by the EMA itself. But the whole approval process is staffed with people that are borrowed from the member states.
So now that we have this move from the expert panel to the EMA, is there, or have you seen on maybe the plan or something, another part of the medical device field, if I can say, that will move to an agency?
But I know that in Brussels, all options are on the table, because I think it's very safe to say that nobody's happy with the way the rollout of the MDR actually went, regardless of what authorities will say on the record, but nobody's happy with how this goes. And also, I think everybody that has not been living under a rock the last couple of years can see that by the end of the grace period for the MDR, so that's 26 May 2024, we are going to have an enormous problem in Europe, because end of 2020, Team NB published a document saying there's about 12,000 certificates to expire. And now there are rumors that actually that are quite public that the Commission has done its own exercise and has found out that it's actually more than twice as much. It's 25,000 certificates that are still to expire before the end of the grace period, which means that basically from now, so in slightly over 2 years, the system has to process about 25,000 certificates. And if you look at how many certificates the system has processed so far, which is, I believe, at this time about 800.
Okay.
And you do not need to be a rocket scientist to think like, okay, so we are well into the grace period. We have 800 certificates granted. We still have 25,000 more to go. And also, the increase of notified body capacity is not going to keep up with that. So that we are going to, and that's also something that the Commission, that the MDCG itself has already said in 2020, even in the MDR joint implementation plan, that they're counting on a number of manufacturers not being able to convert their certificate in time, which is basically, I think it's a bit cynical and understated way to put it, but depending on how this plays out. So on the one hand, you have the notified bodies that might still ramp up capacity a bit. On the other hand, there's this huge curve of certificates that expires in larger quantities towards the end of the grace period. So you can just draw a line there, basically, of increasing capacity and increase in certificates that expire. And you will see that there's part that is above the line. And if you as a manufacturer are in the part above the line, then you won't be able to place new product on the market for quite some time.
Just maybe to remind to people why we have this situation is because just before the date of application, so everybody or all manufacturers try to renew their MDD certificate before that date, which makes that all the certificates are now still valid until the end of the transition period, because maximum is 26th of May 2024. And it's funny because each time I meet a new customer with a new certificate, I ask them to send me the certificate they have. And the date is always the same, 26th of May 2024, 26th of May 2024. It's like, okay, have you done everything the same day with all the customers? But it's like that. They have really all renewed their certificate just at the end of the transition period, which makes that now everybody is able to continue to sell their products on the market until the 26th of May 2024. And we have, from the beginning, if I remember, we had, as you said, Team NB that published that. MedTech Europe also talked about that before. So a lot of hints, or a lot of discussion were already done before about that. So now can we say that what they were planning is really coming to reality here?
Yes, it's, you have this expression that you reap what you sow, right?
Yeah.
And this is, we are about to reap what we've sown. Because I think, and of course with hindsight, you can always question the wisdom of decisions retrospectively, but it was decided with the grace period that we would do a huge kicking the can down the road exercise for legacy devices, in the expectation that by the time history would catch up with us, that there would be sufficient notified body capacity, which there isn't. Because I think the major mistake that was made was that the fact that even if we have all notified bodies that were, so all 55 or something like that, that were notified when the MDR entered into force, this is still the capacity that is the capacity for running the system under normal conditions. So that is normal surveillance. Every now and then there's a new device, but not a situation where you suddenly have to pass this huge bulge through the system. That's just, even with all the notified bodies admitted, you still cannot pass that kind of bulge through the system. So to me, it has always been really surprising why people would think that if they have more notified bodies, then the problem would sort itself out, because that's not what's going to happen. The only thing you do is you create maybe a bit more capacity, but you also create enormous scarcity by this way of transition. And of course, the problem with scarcity is that, if you don't need scarcity, then everybody that is not able to pay the price will drop off the table, basically.
Yeah. And so we talked just before about MDCG, which is kind of what we can say is look at more closer to what is a medical device agency, if I can say. So what is MDCG then? Thinking about this plan, this the joint implementation plan that we had, if I can say, that is talking mainly about this transition.
Yeah, basically what they were saying in the MDR implementation plan is, we don't know if the problem is really so severe. Nobody gives us any data. Nobody talks to us. It's very hard to actually quantify the whole situation. But now they seem to have done this quantification exercise internally, at least the Commission has, because now they've figured out that this is actually a huge problem. So now, of course, I could imagine that in MDCG meetings, people are looking at each other like, so what are we going to do with this and how are we going to solve it? Because to get back to the news message that we were discussing before the recording started, I mean, now again, the industry is asking for a longer grace period, which I think is completely understandable that they do, because for industry, more time is more time. It's as simple as that. But on the other hand, I mean, is it going to solve the problem? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Because of course, if we go back to the bulge that I was describing, if you give the bulge more time, then you flatten the bulge, of course.
Exactly.
But the problem is that even with all the notified bodies, you need to completely squash the bulge in order to solve the problem.
So here the on the news, as you said, so it's the French and the German medtech groups that were calling for 2 years of extension. So it's just a call, if I can say. But here, what we are saying is that 2 years even will maybe not be enough. It should be like 10 years to be more on the safe side.
Well, I mean, I don't know, unless they come up with something else. I've also given this some thought, and I think the whole, problem, you could say, or issue started when the choice was made. We are not going to grandfather existing devices into the system, as they did in the US, for example, when they did a major revision to legislation over there. And if you don't grandfather, then it means you have to review everything again. And that's a lot of work. And I think when they made the decision, we are not going to grandfather, they didn't realize that it would basically mean this for the system, that you would get this huge bulge for which there would never be sufficient capacity.
And there is the grandfathering, there is the Annex 16 additional products, there is the additional Article 16 for for importers and distributors. There is. So it's more like before with 55 they can do that. Now with 27 they have to do that. So it's more also the problem.
Yeah, also notified bodies have to do more different things. Yeah, so and also, I mean, what you see is like I think several notified bodies on your podcast have been saying, they are ramping up capacity like crazy. Yeah. But it's at some point there are not enough people in the market that they
because
can
of this
hire.
Because of the expiration of the certificate at 2024. Because I think this is it's we had I think the discussion with Andreas Stenger for the IVDR. Yeah. We talk about IVDR just after, but it was like that. We are ramping up, but as everybody has their certificate or their grace period, I don't know, it was for IVDR, it was grace period that if I can say the transition was changing per classification. Then people were, if I can say, going down again for the applications because they had more time now to implement. So it's the same that will happen also with happening also with the MDR. So people are waiting until the end to then transition to MDR.
Which is kind of stupid because if you know that there's going to be a huge pilot, I mean, it's the kind of logic I can explain to my 14-year-old daughter. Like if you want to go to the supermarket and you want, or you would go clothes shopping, and you want a nice, quiet clothes shopping experience. When do you go? At the busiest time or at the quietest time? And she will say, go at the quietest time.
It's like going at Christmas to the shop for getting a gift nearly to the end of Christmas, to the date of Christmas. So.
Yeah, that's an even better example. Like you wait with your Christmas shopping until the day before Christmas. Yeah, exactly. It's so busy. It's so busy in this shop. Yeah.
Exactly. And
how is that possible?
So when we heard about this French and German medtech group call, so do you think there will be like SNITEM and BVMed? So do you think they will be heard, or it's still another, if I can say, screaming where nobody will be listening to that?
I think the industry has changed tech a bit in the sense that because nothing happens at European level if the member states don't want it.
Yeah.
The tactic is now to get a couple of big member states to say, this is something we need. And it's unsurprising that Germany is behind it because Germany has quite a lot of the actual European manufacturers of medical devices and also the small ones in its range, which is significant because, and that is something I see every day, that small and medium-sized companies that are coming to the market with their first product just have absolutely no way of actually even getting a notified body at this moment. It's really, really difficult. So that's one. And I think, France is also a major member state that is very opinionated on the MDR dossier. So the fact that, and also SNITEM in France has also shown that they are not afraid to put their stamp on interpretation of medical devices law. There's this interesting case by Philips and SNITEM against the French government about whether something certain software was a medical device or not. So yeah, they're I would say more of an activist national association that also has the means to really go after things. So I think, it completely makes sense for these two associations to see if they can move things on a national level so the national governments can make things move on a European level. Yeah.
And so just maybe as a reminder, if people still decide to wait until 2024 and notified bodies are not able to manage or to certify their products, so as soon as they pass the date of the 26th of May 2024, can they do something or they cannot do anything anymore?
Well, it depends on what you mean with do something. The expiry date on the certificate is 26 May 2024. So unless Article 120, Section 3 is amended to say, well, but for these certificates, you get even more time, then we can do another round of renewing of these certificates. Notified bodies will be happy because it's good business. But
you remember we talked on another podcast of the Orphan procedure, if I can say something like that, with a member state that takes the lead of notified bodies that are not certified. Yeah. So is this an option also? I remember that. So
orphaning wouldn't be applicable in this case because orphaning only happens when the notified body itself falls off the table.
Okay.
So the only way orphaning could actually play a role during the grace period is if you have a legacy device, then the old notified body still has to do surveillance. And then the old notified body decides that it's going to stop these activities. Then you could be in an orphaning scenario, which would be complicated because it's legally impossible to find a new notified body for an orphaned legacy device.
Okay.
Because if that wouldn't be a significant change, I don't know what is. So then the authorities are basically stuck with these devices for the rest of the grace period. Now, but if you haven't done anything, if you're in the category of manufacturers that doesn't have their certificate renewed into an MDR certificate before the end of the grace period, then you have to stop placing product on the market after the end of the grace period because the certificate has expired. So the only thing you can do if you see this coming is ramp up production like crazy, make as much of a bridging stock, for example, that you can, place it on the market before the 26th, and then sell it off But the problem there is this is only a finite strategy because you only have another sell-off period of a year.
1 year, yeah, 2025, exactly.
Until 26 May 2025. So no, you shouldn't. So you should have a bridging stock of maximum a year, and then and also make sure that in that year it's still going to happen, your MDR certification, because otherwise, then you really hit the end of the road. Then you're really at the roadblock, so to speak.
Yeah, I think the strategy you just described is exactly what I would have advised. So we call that, as we said, placing on the market, and you have to place on the market prior to the end of your certification. And then all the products that are placed on the market, remember, placed on the market is not on your stock, on your company's stock. It is outside. It is within your supply, within your distributors or hospitals or whoever that is kind of taking your stock. And this product then can be sold all along, during 1 year after that. So, and I hope during that year, you are doing the maximum to be certified again under EU MDR so that you can sell again new products. It's one strategy, but this is the one that I will have anyway recommended to anyone.
That's really not the kind of thing you would like to be dependent on. So I think, the only thing you can do as a company is try and, because as you said earlier, notified bodies are actually experiencing a dip in applications at this moment. So it means that a lot of manufacturers have actually found out that they are not ready at this time. But this is actually the moment to go for conformity assessment, because at this time, notified bodies actually still have capacity. And like the Christmas shopping example that you gave, the longer you wait, the more problematic it gets. So there, I think it's quite unfortunate, as I see with quite a lot of companies, is that the management of the companies is not always that well informed, and they just think like, oh, we have until 2024.
Yeah.
Oh, there is a delay. They pull resources away from the regulatory department for MDR. And then suddenly the whole project is slowed down, which I think is a terrible mistake. And whenever I'm speaking with clients, I always have to tell the management, like, hey guys, it's just core business, right? So how could that ever be important? Think a bit, please, before you start moving these budgets around, because this is really... this is a lot more important than a new parking lot in front of the building or something. This is about the whole European market. Do you realize that? And then suddenly, people start to look a bit ruffled, and they're like, oh, really, yes, really, yeah.
So we have discussed a lot about MDR for the transition period, and during this transition period, we just have maybe something to remind to people for legacy devices during this transition period. From the 26th of May 2021 until the 26th of May 2024, there is still some rules that you have to apply under MDR, even if you are MDD. Yeah,
because the MDR says that you already have to apply, some pretty elaborate quality system elements from the MDR already. Like post-market surveillance, for example, which actually includes post-market clinical follow-up, having a good post-market surveillance system, economic operator provisions, because one of the weird things is that in the MDR, in Article 120, Section 3 says registration of economic operators applies prospectively. But then the MDCG gives a guidance saying, no, there's all kinds of other stuff that is actually already applicable for legacy devices. Because I remember having a pretty theoretical, fierce discussion with people about whether, for example, Article 13 and 14 about importer and distributor already applied as a date of application. Some people were saying no, because what part about only registration of economic operators don't you understand? And I was saying yes, because Article 123 doesn't delay these things.
Exactly.
And now with this MDCG 2021-25, we landed somewhere in the middle, which is, that's just totally nuts, because now you really have to look at that document, go through the table, and see for legacy devices what applies to certain economic operators and what doesn't. So, for example, there is this situation that the MDRCG 2025 says, well, if you're an importer of a legacy device, you don't have to do importer labeling yet. But you do need to do importer, and you don't need to do importer verification on criteria A, B, C, D. But if you have reason to believe that the device is not in conformity, then you do need to act. So exactly. There are parts of the provision that you need to apply. And some of my clients are distributors that are also importers of medical devices. They have no idea about that. They're like, what? Should we apply this? Yes, you have to apply this. Why? It's not in the law. No, but it is in the guidance. So it's true that there is a lot of things that there is maybe some misunderstanding between that because it was not clear also for people, or there is a lot of interpretation that can be in place here. But concretely, I had some customers that passed some audits as legacy devices under MDD, while the audit was only under MDD, but they got some major non-conformities because they haven't applied the 120.3 about change their quality management system, procedure, etc. So it's a major non-conformity. It's not just a minor or don't forget this, don't forget that. No, you are not applying the law, so it's a major non-conformity. So you have, just a reminder, you have really to be careful of that. Yeah, same with significant change, for example, which is another one of these landmines in Article 120, Section 3. And yeah, if you don't have a procedure for determining if something is a significant change or not, then major non-conformity. Exactly. That's actually quite something. And I see people make mistakes with significant changes all the time, especially in M&A, where they structure a transaction in a way that it triggers a significant change because they decide that they are going to transfer the CE certificates, which is not possible.
Exactly.
Not possible.
I mean, it's funny because people think that the CE certificate is transferable, but no, it's the name of the company is there, so it's not like you take it and you move it to another company. You have to redo a complete certification about your company for this product and for everything. Exactly. So it is a significant change.
If you are doing any kind of transaction that is not a complete share transaction where nothing else changes in the quality system, then it might be that you need, as soon as they start talking about we need to transfer certificates, then as a regulatory person, you immediately shout to them, not possible. This is not possible. So it means that you are probably getting involved in a significant change, which can completely invalidate the commercial rationale of your merger. So, and I've seen that happen a couple of times now. And it's usually careful because, of that, that's usually not because the regulatory department doesn't know or even doesn't say it, but nobody listens to them. So it's also one end of the company listening to the other one and avoiding really costly mistakes.
Yeah, and on the same vein, if I can say, for significant changes, what I'm advising also some companies is, about significant changes, teach that also to your design departments, to other departments, because maybe they have no clue about that. So the worst thing that can happen is that they make a significant change without telling you or without informing you at the end, and then you are here saying, okay, what should I do now? So, inform your team about all these kind of things here.
Yeah, and also if you're doing a merger, don't write in your information memorandum for the company that's going to be sold that you are going to implement all this new functionality, but that you also have a certificate valid until 26 May 2024, because then people like me know that it's just, that somebody there is absolutely doesn't know what they're doing.
Exactly.
It's usually the merchant bank that wrote the information memorandum, by the way, but even those you can sort of double check on this.
Great. So I think we covered all the elements that we wanted to talk about here, and I hope this will help a lot of companies about why we have this kind of transition for also the expert panel and also the question about MDR and IVDR for that. But Erik,
I give you a small word on the IVDR, Monir, because
IVDR. So we have here a situation about MDR, and for IVDR, is there anything new that we want to talk about?
Yeah, because I hinted at that already, is that in January they completely changed the transitional regime of the IVDR, basically creating an enormous amount of legacy devices under the IVDR.
Yeah.
Because what they did was because before we had as only legacy devices the current Annex 2 devices, right? So the ones that have a CE certificate from a notified body under the IVD at this time. But now, because almost every device under the IVDR is a classified device, right? Because they need a notified body. This means that under the IVDR, we have a huge amount of legacy devices. Basically, every device is a legacy device except Class A non-sterile devices, which is, well, still a lot of devices, but not the majority. So that means that the majority of devices under the IVDR has to deal with this legacy device stuff. And also with the IVDR, they engaged in the same kicking the can down the road strategy that they did for the MDR, except that the IVDR, we have the problem that there's currently even less relative capacity available, with only 6 notified bodies out of 22 under the IVDD.
Yeah. With
1 coming down the pipeline quite soon and then a long time nothing. So even although they put in this nice, we have grace periods, thing will sort itself out, I think the problem is going to be even bigger, because I think MedTech Europe at some point had calculated that for the IVDR we needed a 780%, so that's 780% increase in certification capacity, which of course is not going to, in order to pass the bulge through the system. And that's of course never going to happen. So I've seen competent authorities on conferences say, but we can do national exemptions if needed, because we have the national exemption tool. And in worst case, there's still Article 59 of the MDR and the equivalent in the IVDR. But the problem there is, and that everybody conveniently forgets that these exemptions only apply to situations where there is a critical need in healthcare. And there is actually a danger that none of the devices on the market for this particular application are going to be available. But if you are going to ask for a national exemption and there is an alternative available, then the competent authority on a national level will say, sorry, no exemption for you, because there is an alternative. We will buy that one. So it's, this is not a way, it's only a way to fix critical problems in the healthcare system, but it's not a panacea for the transitional regime, and that's something that people tend to forget quite often.
So it looks like this decision to kind of shuffle again the application for the date of application the date of application is still the 26th of 2021, but the application for each classification is a plaster. It's not solving the problem. We'll have the problem later maybe, but we'll have still the problem. As you said, 22 notified bodies for IVDD were available before, when not a lot of IVDD devices needed to a notified body. And we have 6 notified body for IVDR, when 80% of the IVDR business need a notified body. So it's like completely the invert, but also in the number of notified bodies. So which I think will not solve the issue. I mean, this transition period, increase of transition period will not solve the issue, but it's making the problem coming later. So it's more about that.
So if you look at the example I gave with respect to the MDR, so you've got this sharp increasing curve of devices at the end that need a certificate, which is basically, it's not even a curve like it is with the MDR, because the curve was expiring certificates. But in this case, we have devices with a declaration of conformity, and which is self-issued. So that means that everybody will issue a declaration of conformity forever. So that means that we have a huge hard stop at the end of every risk class grace period. which means
it's a lot of it's a lot of stairs, if I can say, going still up.
And it's going like boom, like this. And I mean, so it's even more urgent, I would say, with the IVDR, but.
So it's
in the future, 25, 26, 27, 28.
With everything late, it's fine.
Yeah, who knows? We will still be alive by then with the way things are going in Ukraine. Who knows?
Exactly. But I think it's important here to just maybe plan that for future. So for me, the advice that we get out of that is don't wait for the end of the grace period or the end of the end of your certificate. Do that as of now. If you want really to be on the safe side, if you don't want to struggle, if you want really to be on the safe side, so do it now, because I mean, at the end, the risk is what we talked about, and you'll have to find other strategies or other scenarios, and maybe there is nothing. So it's not like there will be a lot, there will be nothing. And even if you have those 2 years extension or more extension, it's just putting the problems for later. It's the same as of now. So no change for you.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you can, of course, be like the hedgehog in the middle of the road when a car is coming at night. But a hedgehog doesn't know better, but we are people. We are supposed to be able to figure that out.
Exactly. That is right. Okay. So Erik wanted finally to just talk about the last thing related to the second edition of your book, which is near completion. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, well, I've basically finished most of the substantive work. Actually, the guy you can see sitting in the back behind me,
I see that,
Dennis, my trainee, he's actually working on doing some gap stuff, and he's
when is it expected?
Tremendous help. But we're almost finished on the substance, and then it needs to go to all the substance needs to be incorporated in the layout version. So we'll be transferring lots of Word document stuff into Adobe InCopy, so it goes into Adobe InDesign, which is still a lot of work, but and of course then some people will need to proofread it. But I'm hopefully aiming for the date of application of the IVDR, and then I will basically have caught up with the whole past year. So then we will have another book that is current by 1st of April, end of March this year. So that would be really nice if I can make that happen. But if you're considering buying the book, of course you're welcome to buy it now. But maybe wait
a few months for that, and it will be the anniversary of the EU MDR. So it's a good gift for the 1 year anniversary of MDR there. Okay. Good, Erik. So it was really a pleasure to have you. Thank you for all those updates. I'm sure this will be helping a lot of people to understand the situation. We are not here making you a class, if I can say, of MDR, a bit, but more explaining you the context and the situation so that you take your decision and you make good strategies for placing your devices on the market. And I'm sure that all what we are talking about, what we have talked about today is helpful.
And just on the word of strategy, don't make one single linear strategy, because that is never a good strategy.
Scenarios.
Scenarios.
This is the word that I learned with you. Scenarios. Good. Okay, thank you, Erik, and wish you a nice day.
Likewise, Monir. Thanks for having me.